love calibrating circuits. I love calibrating circuits. We all love calibrating circuits. Now, whether we love it, we like it, or simply just put up with it, the adjustment, tuning, and yes, calibration of our analog circuits is a vital component of our digital lives. And in order to accomplish all of those necessary changes, corrections, and adjustments to our PCBs, we generally look to trimpots or trimmer potentiometers, right? But have you really considered the ins and outs of those trimmers sitting on your board? Yeah, I didn't think so. Hi, I'm Amelia Dalton, host of Chalk Talk. Trimmer potentiometers are a great way to fine tune the output of an analog circuit and can be found in a wide variety of applications. In this episode of Chalk Talk, Patricia Moorman from Bourns and I break down the what, where, how, and why of trimpots and investigate the benefits that Bourns Trimpots can bring to your next design. And before we get started, don't forget to click that link. There you can find even more information about this topic from Bourns. Hi, Patty. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So we're talking about Trimpot trimming potentiometers today. But Patty, before we dig into the details, in your experience, what kind of questions are you asked when it comes to trimmers?
Well, the reality is we're in a digital world, right? Everything is digital out there now. We see it in our day-to-day life, and it's been changing for many years, and that will continue. Trimmers are a very old product, and they are one that is still needed today. So what I see the engineers always ask are, why would I ever use a trimmer? Now, let's talk about that. Trimmers have actually been around since the start of this electronics, meaning we are over 50 years old. The product is basically analog. So the question is, I work in digital electronics. I see digital. Everything is digital. Why would I ever need an analog component in the first place? Then they'll come in and they'll say, well, okay, but what does it do? How do I work with it? Why would I need that again? So I always go back, and we're going to answer some more questions about this. They'll ask, when I use trimmers, doesn't that just complicate my design? Why would I need to use it? Why? It's going to affect my end user. My customer will not be happy on this. I also get asked, okay, you convinced me I do need a trimmer, but where do I use it? What are the applications for this? And that's why we want to go through and talk and explain. And then the real reality is, once our teams out there, all of our engineers understand trimmers are needed, then they finally ask, well, what characteristics do I need to consider before I actually pick this trimmer to put into my design?
Okay, so Patty, in order to talk about trimmers, we need to start with resistors, right?
Absolutely. So let's look at what a resistor is. And everybody in our engineering out there across the world understands a resistor, I would hope. A resistor restricts the flow of the current in a circuit. So basically, I always remember many years ago, they'll tell you it's like a hose, and that it basically constricts, and then it will actually allow some current to flow through and allow you in that pipeline. So a resistor is needed in every single printed circuit board. There are so many types of resistors that it becomes sometimes overwhelming. However, the reality is, and what becomes the fact of the matter, is that a trimmer is actually a resistor. So we are used in this digital world as a variable resistor. So if you remember, a resistor is sort of a type of product that goes in and that constricts that flow of the current. The trimmer allows you to adjust that flow of the current. A variable resistor is basically a trimpot. Now, because we've been around a long time and there's a lot of different names for us, I thought it would be great for us to understand, yes, a trimpot is a trimming potentiometers. It is also known as a variable resistor. You will get questions and say, well, what is a variable? It is the same. Trimmers and trimpot are variable resistors. They're also known as potentiometers, or a small potentiometer in a trimmer's case, or pots. And basically, it's a circuit collaborator. So what does that all mean? Why do I really need it? Again, analog in a digital world, what's going on here? But you need this trimmer because it will actually allow you to adjust on that circuit. So you have a printed circuit board out there, and the printed circuit board is added with multiple types of components. These components will actually all have tolerances, plus or minus tolerances everywhere. So a trimmer is put on the board to help you regulate that tolerance, meaning the circuit is flowing, but it isn't perfect to the board. So a trimmer actually gives you the capability to adjust. And what that means is you can adjust to your specific application. So for an engineer, it gives you flexibility. What it really does is it removes the complications of the board, and it allows you to enhance all of those applications. So functionally, you can calibrate it exactly to what you need. Now, what it end really result for you is it allows you quicker time to the market. Because of that flexibility, you aren't going back and redesigning a board all the time. Fine-tuning of the output of the circuit with a trimmer is the analog technology that makes it become the digital technology.
So, Patty, what kind of functions are we talking about when it comes to the trim pot?
The functions really are very basic, and that's a good thing. You can literally calibrate this circuit to be a voltage divider or to be a rheostat. And the voltage divider actually allows you to put through 3 different terminals. So on a trimmer, there's going to be the output of 3 terminals. That's what's connected on the printed circuit board. When you use this trimmer, it's allowing you to adjust the voltage to what you need on that board. It also can be used as a rheostat. It controls the current. And in some cases, it can also be used to offset the operational amplifiers. So the functionality is always going to be the same. Basically, a rheostat or a voltage divider. And that's how you'll look at it to put it on your board so that you know you can adjust current or voltage.
That makes sense. Now, Patty, can you explain a bit more about how trimmers work?
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Trimmers are electromechanic, and as we said, they're a variable resistor. 3 terminals are always connected in the bottom or the side of a trimmer, or this potentiometer. Those terminals are actually put into the board, and that's how the current comes up and through. Those terminals are connected to the inside of the trimmer, which is a resistive element. Now that is connected to a wiper, and that wiper is movable. The wiper changes mechanically, and as that changes, the resistance value that is from the wiper to one of the terminals, remember 1, 2, 3 terminal on the printed circuit board, that actually changes your defined ratio. So that means you're able to adjust your trimmer in real time for your board. Now let me just show you, it might help to see this in action. These are all different components of the trimmer, and when you see this, it actually moves. The white section here is the element we talked about. The 3 terminals are coming in. They're inside the molded housing. The wiper comes over to the rotor, goes inside the housing, and then it becomes part of the trimmer. The board is adjusted through the shaft that allows you to mechanically adjust. So, as I said, there's multiple components to the trimmer, and it's a very precision type of product. How does it actually work? Well, all of these components have to come together so it works efficiently and accurately for you. As we've mentioned, the core is the element, and that would be right here. This is either a cermet, which is basically a combination of ceramics and metallization, and it becomes a cermet. On that cermet is inks, and those inks are what vary and allow you to have multiple types of resistance on your trimmer. Then you also can have a wire wound, which would be a similar function but looks different. The next section that really comes through is going to be the wiper, and it's this very small stamped multi-fingered type of product that Bourns manufactures themselves, and it actually connects and moves across the ink on this substrate. That is the wiper. It's the movable contact. That contact then is inside the rotor. and that is called the contact actuator. This rotor is what is the connection to the outside world. Now we actually have an O-ring in there that helps the snugness inside of the component. And then you have a shaft that connects it all the way down. So the shaft is a brass shaft, and that is what you use to move and adjust on the element so that you get the right resistance. The end terminals are really what are connected, as I mentioned earlier. They're on the printed circuit board. And all of that is put together with epoxy. So what you're looking at here are the basics of this component. And it just shows you how you can work. The shaft is the interface that allows you to adjust this rotor inside, which is connected to the contact, which moves the resistance on the substrate, and you will get the action you needed. What's important to note is that Bourns manufactures all of these components. We are 100% vertically integrated. And specifically, the inks are very valuable, and you need to understand that we have our own processes that pull in these inks. All of this is to give you the highest quality available in the industry. Now, to help you understand that and to really understand why and this is so important to your board, we would like to show you the assembly of a trimmer. This is actually in our Taiwan facility, and it gives you an overview of how much automation is truly involved in manufacturing a potentiometer, or a trimpot in this case. You can see there's multiple functions. As I spoke earlier, there's so many different components, but in addition to all those components, we need to do things like mark each part. We also need to look at it, and we are going to test each part. And you can see we pull this all together. It's an automated factory, but what we actually are looking at is how we insert it all and assemble it all and put this together. If you see this round blue portion, this is actually where it comes in. It's called a feeder, and it will flow through and come out the other side and gives you the exact part. If it doesn't fit into the side, it's going to be rejected. We have the highest quality in the industry, and it's because of this automation. There's so many different areas that need to be watched and monitored and kept to date. The element that we spoke about earlier has to be inserted precisely into that housing. If it's not going to sit down, and you won't get the right resistance needed when you flow with your wiper and when you are adjusting that wiper. When we look at how it flows down, it comes through, it gets in, and now, as we mentioned, you have epoxy. And that epoxy then has to be put through as the top. This is after O-rings and everything else is added completely. The last portion is really the epoxy. We dispense it, but then it also has to be cured. And we continue that, and you can see now it's going to flow down into those reels, and those are actually where we go into testing. So this is after it's made. Even though we have complete evaluation throughout the automation process, then we do a final test.
So, when it comes to trimmers, what kind of considerations or characteristics do we need to keep in mind?
Well, this is actually where the engineer needs to be very consistent and understand his board and what he needs. So there are basically 7 key questions to ask. And then within all of those, what does that really mean? When we're talking, the first thing I suggest is look at what is the minimum resistance that you require. What is the minimum on your board that will allow all those components to come together so that you have the right output? So you want to look at your absolute minimum resistance. And that's basically from where the wiper is and the terminal. So you have the center and it's back and forth. You need to understand what is the minimum you can have for the value. Then you look at things like adjustability. And we suggest you design to the lowest value so that you can adjust that trimmer to a more precise output. What is the temperature coefficient? And that is also something that will depend on the type of product you're going to choose and what kind of trimmer to use. Basically, that change in the resistance is a factor by per degree Celsius, and it means the temperature change. A lower value will give you a more stable output, trimmer output. And then you need to look at your actual and customer and how your product is being used. Is there going to be shock or vibration? And that's what you want to understand to choose a more robust trimmer that can withstand those environments. What kind of reliability is required? And reliability is really significant because this is the type of product you put on your board and you're not going to think about it again. It's a set and forget. So your customers out there won't even know you adjusted that trimmer before it left so that your board was precisely to the specifications you've announced to the world. This means you need a trimmer that is reliable. Bourns is very reliable and goes through annual testing of all of our reliability. And then, of course, you need to look at load life. And for our engineers, you know that's the number of hours that that device will actually dissipate the power. So you look at the specifications needed. And then the tolerance of the resistance. So there's multiple characteristics that are needed, and that's how you need to look at your board and your end customer requirements and the requirements of your product. I can summarize it that then you understand there's going to be different types of products available. And that means once you know what you're going to choose, let's look at the board. Do you want a board that's surface mount or through hole? And we have trimmers for both. Then you look at the adjustability. Is this a single turn? Meaning, do you adjust that wiper once and that's it? Or do you prefer a multi-turn, which gives you a lot precision? It's a product that allows you, as you move across the ink on the substrate or across the wire wound, that will give you better precise accuracy on your linearity, which is the end result. Okay, so the end application really looks at how you're processing your board. Do you need it to be sealed for a much higher processing time and evaluation, or is an open frame acceptable in your usage? Then once you decide all of that, then you can go in to determine your actual features. And this means that trimmer has to fit on that printed circuit board. So what is that? Well, all of the shafts that we were talking about, we adjust the housing so that you can have shafts that are on the top, on the bottom, on the side, on the front, or even behind the whole board. That means it's adjustable to fit into your actual application. Again, that goes back and gives you more flexibility. We have them available from the board from 2 millimeters, very small, up to 12 millimeters. Then, because these are all usually used in a high manufacturing process, we can do this in a tube, bulk, embossed tape, ammo pack, tape and reel. The tube is what you saw in the video earlier where we put them all in and finalize the tube. These are all to the standard specifications in the industry. The trimmers then, just so you know, when you're in processing or you're using this in your manufacturing, they are all compatible with pick-and-place equipment. We have ROSH compliant versions and halogen-free conversions. This is a big advantage. Bourns is one of the few that can actually state that. We use our own inks and we develop our own processes so that we have that in mind.
So, what about testing for reliability here? Is there anything in particular we need to keep in mind?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I really appreciate that because reliability is probably the most critical factor once you've chosen your actual trimmer. You need a product that you can put on your board and you're not going to ever worry about it again. So we want reliability. What that means is Bourns will test for reliability to assure you that the specifications that are on our data sheets are met right now once it's off your board, and then in the future as your customers are using this out in their environment and their usage. What you need to really look at is 3 basic environmental properties, physical properties, and electrical properties. Each one of those you have to test specifically. So in the environmental, what we're talking about, not the ROSH, which was the environment to the earth, but the environment of what that product is going to be used. And you need to look at that. So the power rating and temperature coefficient, humidity, all of that has got to be tested and understood. We also do annualized testing for physical properties as well as all of the electrical properties. Bourns guarantees the product that you've asked and specified and that you need for your end customer, we guarantee that we will meet that. And we have test data to give to you, and we do this every year on every single model. It assures that what you purchase from Mouser meets the requirements you wanted. Bourns works hand in glove with Mouser to make sure that they have the most up-to-date data and all of the test specifications and can give you the product that you require.
So, Patty, what does Bourns have in terms of trimmers?
That's a good question because Bourns offers the largest, broadest selection of trimmers in the industry. And Mouser carries all of those products for you. There are literally 54 different models, and we had talked briefly about military. We've also talked about the single turn, multi-turn, both of those available in surface mount. Single turn, multiple turn, those are available in through hole, and then the open frame. So what this means is you can design to your exact specifications, and you can find this on Mauser's shelf.
So, what kind of benefits does your precision trimmer bring to the table?
That's such a nice question because as we keep talking about, this is an analog product and it's in a digital environment, and the world is becoming more digitized every day. So we're finding that the digital needs are becoming more precise and requirements need to come up to their specifications. Bourns offers new types of trimmers that give you a ratio of your output to input that is consistent. So it means your electrical reading can be standardized by your mechanical rotation of the trimmer so that you can set your trimmer to provide exact accuracy in your linearity so that you are using it to the higher needs of this digital world. This better accuracy and setting of the trimmer allows you to be using this in microcontroller applications. As we know, microcontroller applications are much more sensitive to noise and output. The precision trimmer will offer better linearity and will have less noise. That means less output errors, more precise in your output of your digital information. Bourns trimmers are lower CRV, less noise, and better linearity. Again, this goes back to then the production for you, faster for the operator or machine to adjust to the exact target resistance you needed, and it provides a more consistent output curve.
So, Patty, what kind of applications would trimmers be a good fit for?
Well, that's a very good question because the applications are infinite. Now, I've just listed a few of them up here. We see trimmers in every single digital application out there. Power supplies, microcontrollers, factory automation, everything from RF meters to printers, security systems. We even have a huge group that's in medical. We are that reliable that customers that are in the medical industry have used Bourns trimmers. Scanners, gaming devices, base stations, all applications, wherever you would ever see a printed circuit board, which means a digital light, and you see digital, there's going to be a trimmer there. Even back into Department of Defense, we are the only authorized manufacturer of military trimmers.
You mentioned that different sensors would be a good application for trimmers, right?
Absolutely. So sensors is a very large industry in the world. All over, people are now using more than ever. The end customer is the sensor company that needs to help their end customer understand exactly the environment that they're using. So we offer many sensor types of products. We can offer the photo optical sensor, soil moisture sensor, optical sensor, just a variety of whatever is needed by those sensors.
So, what about the telecom field? I would imagine that trimmers would be a good fit here as well.
You're right. And many people are always surprised because telecom is a very unique industry. It can be very mechanical, but it also can be very digital. As we go into the Internet of Things and everything is connected, we need that core telecom that will help us connect. Trimmers are used across the board in telecom. And basically, we see it even in from the base stations up to antennas and then to boxes that are outside of your house. Trimmers can be used in all types of telecom communication.
So, you mentioned medical applications earlier as well. What would an example of this kind of application look like?
Very good question because medical is so all encompassing and there's so many different applications. As we know, our medical industry has been increasing in the greatness that it can provide for everybody. And where we're seeing it, it started with hearing aids and even like a blood pressure monitor. As things become more used at home, medical needs to be more reliable for things like home environments and home evaluations. So the best way that we can use as an example is when you look at a blood pressure monitor, it can detect the signal from the patient accurately. Patient doesn't even know that this, but when they're measuring and they're sending that signal, then would go back to their doctor. But the microcontroller doesn't have the ADC, analog to digital converter. So they use the resolution is never going to be good enough unless we actually correctly set the gain. Also are used in servo motor, and this is actually an encoder module. And all this means is the trimmer is allowing the adjustment of the optical sensor circuitry in the servo motor. So this is again just another example of how many trimmers are out in the world that we don't even know are being used.
You also mentioned consumer designs as well earlier. What would that kind of application include?
That again is a huge industry when you look at consumer. We are all consumers and we're consumers of many things. We are used even in as a voltage divider in a smoke alarm or a fire alarm. And you can see there's a drawing there to show how it fits on the board. And this is a very small little trimmer that's put in and it's adjusted prior to leaving the factory so that that is exactly set to protect you in an event of a fire alarm need. We're even on vacuum cleaners. If you look at the power control board, you can see there's some little blue trimmers on there. That is where it's actually used as the laser driver. And this means this little robotic vacuum cleaner is used as a voltage adjuster, and it means it's the one that's actually measuring the distance when it moves along on the floor, and it can tell if it's going to hit or not. So it's working inside almost as a sensor, but it's actually adjusting the voltage as it goes because it can be the sensor.
So, Patty, what if I'm concerned about my design meeting the AECQ 200 standard? Can Bourns trimmers help me here as well?
Yes, they can. Bourns Trimpot are the only manufacturers of an AECQ 200 qualified grade 1 trimmer, and that goes mean for a trimmer potentiometer. These models, the 3313 and 3314, are small surface mount 3 and 4 millimeter Cermet type of trimmers. We again completely have passed every test and continue to offer AECQ 200 qualified trimmers.
So, since you're AECQ qualified, what kind of automotive designs would you highlight?
Well, thank you for asking. We have many different automotive designs, so I'll just show you a few examples. This is one that's actually used on the lighting, and it's on the top of the vehicle. It's the emergency warning lights, as you would see on a police car or even on an ambulance. We also have automotive designs on the light sensor. So if you look at this, the resistance is used to stabilize the signal. This is a design where you receive and analyze it as it's coming and going. So when you hear the sirens and you see those lights coming, what's actually adjusting that is a little trimmer. It's an automatic. So the 2 millimeter trimmer, very small, is used in an automotive application. Another area that you can use within the car industry is the entertainment and ANT platform. This just gives you an example of where a trimmer is a very cost-effective solution for the automotive industry. Another design in automotive is using a trimmer in the back sensor. This allows a robust and settable transition so that the sensors that are used in the back of the car can actually be set specifically to each application.
So, Patty, what kind of options does Bourns offer when it comes to trimmers?
As I mentioned earlier, we have the broadest line in the industry, and this just shows you some of the variable options. As we said, there's 54 different models specifically available for everyone, and you can use these in multiple applications. If there isn't something specific enough for you, we also can customize our trimmers. And that means you can add the leads that we were talking about can be cut to your application or they can be extended. We can even look at the shafts if you needed one that was taller or shorter. We can even do different longer life resist elements. Although we have various robust and effective applications, you may have a unique product that needs to have a very long application. So we can do whatever you need. We also have the widest range of resistance. So this means if you need 10 ohms, you could go as low as 10 ohms. 100 code is what it is. If you need 2 million ohms, 2 meg, We can offer that and everything in between. And if that isn't even enough, we can make non-standard type of resistance for you specifically. In addition, we offer the highest quality because our products are all produced at certified manufacturing locations. We have the only AEC Q200 qualified trimmer, and we are the only supplier of DLAM, Department of Land and Marine. Bourns is the reliable supplier for you, and we will be the continuous supplier for you.
All right, so Patty, this has been a lot to take in today. Can you recap your main points for me?
Yes, and I do appreciate all the time, and thank you. It's been my pleasure. Bourns trimmers, or Trimpot, is needed even though we're in a digital world. We are the analog precision that will interact with your digital requirements. We allow you to fine-tune what you need by calibrating precisely on your printed circuit board to allow your customer to have the expectation of what they've ordered. Our product helps you meet your specifications. So when you ship to your end customer, you're not going to need to replace it. We're lowering the cost. You're not going to have a customer out there trying to do their own evaluation on the board, causing damage and expect replacements. We allow you to have satisfied customers. Yes, you can have some adjustments made later, but it would be at your evaluation working with your customer. Trimmers offer you a solution for every type of application. Trimmers are actually used in every market segment. Trimpot is stocked at Mauser, and we have what's needed for today's design engineers. Yes, trimmers are needed in a digital world.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Patty.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate all of your time, and it's important that our audience knows that trimmers are still needed in their designs and will help them meet the criteria for their products for their end customers. Again, I really appreciate all your time, and thank you for inviting me to be part of your show.
And before we go, you didn't forget to click that link, did you? There you can find even more information about this topic from Bourns. For Chalk Talks, I'm Amelia Dalton from eejournal.com. For more Chalk Talks, head on over to the Chalk Talk section of EE Journal. You can't miss it, it's right across the top. Or head on over to YouTube, youtube.com/EE Journal.